I'm Bee.
And I'm Renske.
We are so grateful that you are here.
Welcome to School of Joy.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of School of Joy. And today we're going to be talking about meditation, which is something that I feel quite passionate about talking about, actually. It's a big part of both of our lives, I know that. And it's something that I feel for me has really radically changed my life. I have been meditating now for just over 5 years. And in that first year of meditation, when I really decided to be consistent with my practice, I saw such huge changes in myself, in my physical being, for things that I have been struggling with for many years, actually. And the research really supports meditation. So the research shows that it can lower your cortisol and reduce your anxiety, reduce symptoms of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. It can increase your neuroplasticity, and therefore reduces emotional reactivity, which I think I can see Renska nodding along. We're both resonating with that one. And it can also improve your your immune functioning, lower your blood pressure, lower your cholesterol, can reduce pain, and also increases your attention span. So it has loads of benefits and is actually a really simple practice that everybody can do. But it is something that me and Renska both hear other people saying that they struggle with. And for me, at least, I really resonate with that struggle, or at least have done in the past. So Renska, over to you to talk a little bit more about meditation and how it really is a simple practice.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, life can be a meditation if we want it to be.
Yeah.
For me, I've learned over the years that it's really about just becoming present, and becoming an observer of our life rather than, what we said, going into that emotional reaction so often. But to be able to practice that in our daily lives, with our eyes open, really, we need that continuous practice also with our eyes closed first, because the mind cannot be present just yet. I find, at least with eyes open so much, if we don't have that, sustainable practice, because then the mind is so programmed to live either in the past or in the future. And the practice of meditation really supports us to be present again, to live from a place of presence. And for myself, I completely agree. For myself, it has meant such a drastic change. It brought such a drastic change in my life on many levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, and then a bit further in the practice spiritually as well, feeling that deeper connection to spirit through the practice of meditation. But in the beginning, it wasn't easy. I remember I was just thinking back, like, when did I start meditating? It's about 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And I tend to have quite a busy mind. So especially in the beginning, that practice for my mind was just terrible. It was
Yeah.
like it wasn't able to surrender. So I really had to acknowledge and accept that as well within me. And I learned a bit further down the journey of meditation, that in the first bit of that practice, I had a lot of judgment on myself, not being able to quiet the mind. I
Yeah.
thought that I wasn't good at meditation because my
Mm.
mind was constantly chatting whilst I was like, and especially then when I had the intention, like, okay, now I'm going to sit and be quiet. Then, of course, the mind became like super loud.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a bit further down in that practice, I learned that it's not about quieting the mind, that it's simply to become the observer of the mind, and that through meditation we can take that step back and we can connect with the consciousness behind, the stories of the mind, and um, that we can't be good or bad in meditation, that it's simply a continuous practice of, okay, we see the mind drifting off in having a thought, going into a story. Maybe a thought can become a whole story in our mind, or it jumps from one thought to another. We then become present with that, we become conscious of that, and then we can also ask the mind, can we please come back now to the breath? So
Yeah.
we sort of navigate ourselves back to focusing on the breath, focusing on the present moment. And that is continuous practice. And that even after 8 years of practicing meditation, I have days where the mind is still really busy. I think right now there's more acceptance then. And even that in itself, that I'm sitting to accept that my mind is busy, gives so much more peace to my day, to the
Mm.
rest of my day, or night. Because I was thinking back of like what are other like physical benefits for me, and I realized that my sleep has improved, at least like before Lily was born.
Yeah. Yeah.
My sleep has improved so much because before, I think my busy mind would keep me awake a lot, and
Mm.
I've realized that over the years of practicing meditation, my mind doesn't now go into those stories anymore before going to bed.
Mm.
Um, and there's many different, other changes and benefits that I've experienced. But yeah, I think in general, what's really important to understand, if you're either wanting to start meditation, or if you have started meditation and you struggle with it, is that to come into that acceptance that you can't do it wrong,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I look back at how I began meditation to now, like I think I would hardly believe back then if you told me what I could experience now in meditation. But I love that it's called a meditation practice because it is something that needs to be practiced. And like you, I can still very much have days where my mind is so chattery in meditation. And in fact, last year when we were going through quite a difficult time, every meditation was like that for quite a few months. And yeah, and I think just sitting in observation. And I think one of the things I do that I find really helpful as well is to actually just speak to my ego mind.
Yeah, I do
Hey,
that too. Yeah.
I hear that you really want to be like noisy. I'm listening. And to invite it to step back, to invite it to let go just for a little moment. I think like the other thing I think that would be really good to talk about is how long and how often we need to meditate, because for me now, I can easily sit in a meditation for like half an hour, and it just be amazing the whole time, pretty much. But if you told me that 5 years ago, I would have been like, absolutely not.
Mm.
I needed to have a guided meditation. Now I can sit in silence for that time. Not all the time. Sometimes I need to be guided down into the silence. Sometimes I need the whole thing to be guided. It really does fluctuate. But back then, my aim was to meditate for 10 minutes a day, and I was doing 10 minutes guided meditation with music. And I mean, for me, for me, I had IBS. I had severe IBS for many years, and I'd been through a lot of investigations. They thought I might have had a Crohn's disease. And the second I started meditating regularly, it just disappeared. And I haven't
Mm,
had IBS these last 5 years, having had it for probably 10 years before that. And I had tried everything to change what was going on in my body, and what I really needed was to sit in meditation. And now
mm,
occasionally I'll speak to a doctor or a healthcare professional about that, and they're like, wow, that's amazing.
mm.
So I so believe in the power of meditation, even when your mind is really chattery. Yeah.
How did you keep then the motivation? Because I can believe that's even for me sometimes still the case where I'm like, if I do go through these periods where the mind is really busy, it it sort of comes up with these unconscious excuses
Yeah.
not to sit where when actually what it needs, like all it needs is to sit,
Yeah.
in stillness. Um, but then when the mind, when you had that period where the mind was really loud, how did you navigate that, in still having the discipline to sit then?
Well, with difficulty. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't consistently meditate last year, even though that's absolutely what I did need. There was a long time where I really was in resistance to it. And at the time I was still doing the Master's Way. Eventually you were on maternity leave, so you weren't teaching. And those meditations that we did on our course were like unbearable. I found it really, really challenging. And it taught me a lot actually, because what I ended up doing was, rather than being attached to the shoulds, like I should be able to sit for 30 minutes a day in silence, I became more flexible with it. So like what you talked about earlier about reading, we have these big manuals with the Master's Way, and reading spiritual texts like that actually was what changed my energy and got
Mm.
me back into the meditation, because I found that so supportive,
Yeah.
and it felt like I was connecting with something deeper than me, and my mind was able to be busy in the reading.
Mm.
um and yeah, and then I think the other thing for me is that like my meditation practice isn't always the same. So sometimes that is sitting for 30 minutes a day in silence. Sometimes that's listening to music. I find music can really, really help my mind switch off. That's a tool that for me works really well. Sometimes that's listening to a guided meditation. I listen to your meditations a lot, Renska,
Yeah.
because we have the recordings from class. Um, so I think it's about being flexible and kind of honoring where your mind is at,
Yeah.
rather than resisting it. And I think that's what a lot of people really struggle with in meditation is, oh, it's too hard. They're in
Yeah.
resistance and
Yeah.
they give up.
Yeah. It's almost like then holding on to like, oh, it should look a different way. So then therefore,
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna try it because I can't do it the way my mind thinks it needs to be done. That's,
Yeah.
I guess, then the mind just creating a big judgment on what actually is then in the moment. And that's of course something to learn to then let go of. Yeah, and I find personally then in group, I keep coming back to that, but in group, that makes it so much easier to then acknowledge and accept that resistance of the mind, but then also to move through that resistance and come back to deeper connection,
Mm.
and the deeper surrender. But yeah, I do resonate with that as well. When the mind does struggle, um, I tend to go to different ways now as well of using a mindful, or which is actually to me a really weird word because I'm like, you're trying to empty the
Yeah.
mind and we're calling it mindful.
Yeah.
Um, but to come to a mindful practice, a meditative practice more from an angle that the mind has something to do, but then I
Mm.
do ask my mind to be really present with that. So I either go for a meditative walk where I'm really using my senses, using my consciousness, my awareness to stay conscious during the walk, to stay present during the walk. And every time my mind wanders to a thought, I come back to observing, observing the
Mm.
breath, observing, my posture, observing nature. Nature really helps me as well. Sitting in nature and just looking
Yeah.
out over the water, the trees, the birds, the sky. And that is something then the mind can settle easier into when it's busy. Or the reading spiritual texts,
Mm.
listening to spiritual podcasts, but then not doing other stuff whilst I'm listening to really
Mm.
ask my mind then also, because I do speak to my mind as well there. Like, okay, can we now please um, focus? Can we now please be present with what we're doing, what we're listening to? And that, yeah, that helps to create that shift as well. Candle gazing is another one. You can either light a candle yourself and gaze into the flame, and then notice when the mind drifts and then come back to observing the flame. Or you can put that on the screen. There's if you type in candle gazing on YouTube, and that only needs to be 5 minutes really in the beginning, because
Mm.
that's then hard enough for the ego to keep that focus. Um,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
so much better to do 5 minutes a day and do it every day, even if it's
yeah,
a struggle, and just practice it than to, like sit and struggle for an hour a week in one session.
yeah,
For me anyway, it certainly has been something that I've really built up to and continue to do because, some of the activations that we do are over an hour.
yeah. They
It's
can
quite,
be quite long. Yeah, yeah,
it's quite funny, like depending on where I'm at with my head. Sometimes before class, I'll look, oh, how long is today's activation? Oh no, it's an hour
yeah,
and 15 minutes.
yeah,
But even with that, then sometimes if my ego is really loud, like one of the things I learned to do last year again when I was struggling was, we have the text of the activation with us. So sometimes in the activation, I will sit and go into meditation, and then quite often at some point I'll kind of come out of a deeper space and the activation is still continuing, and then my ego mind can get quite busy. So then sometimes I'll get out the text and just read along with it, and giving my ego mind something to do really is supportive of that.
mm,
Um, yeah, and another thing that I think is also really helpful is sounding. So if you
yeah,
sound some long
yeah,
do that. You can do that for the whole meditation if you need to, but I find sometimes just doing that at the beginning, maybe 5, 10 long, deep, because it slows your breath
yeah.
and you kind of can connect with the sensation of the sound in your throat, in your chest. I find that can be so helpful as well to quieting the mind.
It's a really good one. Yeah, because the frequency of the sounding is more familiar to the ego than the frequency of light. And
Mm.
what we're doing when we're sitting, in meditation really, and we go into heart center space, we bring in the light of our spirit. And that can be very overwhelming for the ego, because the ego is very unfamiliar with that high frequency, because it's very programmed to live in that low frequency of energy. And the sounding is much more familiar for the ego mind. So it really helps the sort of creating that bridge for the ego, with spirit, to open
Yeah.
up to that connection again and to that light. Yeah, so that's a really good one. I really love sounding.
Mm.
I absolutely love sounding. I do it in the car, do it in the shower. Even yesterday night, before Lily went to bed, I then hold her and I sound some ohms and stuff. It really helps me to regulate from the day
Mm.
and to clear
Mm.
our fields. Yeah. It's really beautiful practice. And it's so simple. I know though, like for myself, for a long time there has been resistance to sounding. I felt that my throat, there was just a lot of fear sitting in my throat to actually sound. So I can imagine if you're listening and you think like, no way I'm going to sound, then maybe, find places where no one can hear you, where no one can see you. Like, that's why I love the sounding in the car,
Yeah.
because I'm by myself behind the steering wheel, or maybe, Lily is in the back. But then no one else is bothered by it, and my ego
Mm.
mind is a bit more settled then. I mean, nowadays, there's no big fear around it anymore, but I used to have that. So, yeah, I guess it's finding a safe space then to start. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I still struggle with. And when we got together in January, we had a sounding session, and I did not make any sound. I was just like, oh no, I just felt too unsafe. And like I do my chakra clearing, which is like sounding, and it took me a long time to do that in front of Tom. And now he loves it. He's like, oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
he loves the thymus one. Oh, I like it.
Yeah, funny.
So yeah, so I think it is something to build up to. But yeah, I think in the car is a really good place to do it, because actually often you can't even necessarily even hear yourself. Like if you're on the
Yeah.
motorway and it's quite loud, you could just do it really low, but even the vibration just is so calming for your nervous system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another way for me, this is, for example, when I sit to channel, which is like higher frequency from a higher self. When I sit to channel guidance and I feel that I'm expanded, yet the mind comes sort of in and out. Um, what my higher self actually guides me to do every time is to breathe deeply. And what
Mm,
she teaches me really is that the breath is the gateway into our heart. So the breath is always, yeah, it's that gateway going deeper into ourselves. Excuse me. It's the gateway to coming home. And it's so simple, actually, just creating a deeper and slower in breath,
mm,
and just creating a slower and longer out breath. And then sort of, I give my mind almost then this task, like, can we breathe in a little bit deeper? And then,
mm,
and then I ask my mind, can we maybe breathe out even a little bit longer? And then
mm,
sort of the mind can then settle into that practice of deepening the in breath and lengthening the out breath.
yeah.
And that always, always, always supports me to then let go the chatter and and connect with that higher guidance. Yeah.
Mm. And I think the other thing is about actually being physically comfortable. So I think when I first started meditation, I had this idea that I needed to be sat in the lotus, the lotus position with my
Yeah.
feet up on my knees. And like, I still do the majority of my meditations lying down on my bed. And I think that again, if there's any discomfort in your body and you're trying to quieten the mind, then that isn't supportive of that. So I think um, being physically comfortable, whether that is sitting or lying down, is also really important for if you are starting that meditation practice.
I do remember first couple times I tried to meditation sitting down on a chair, not necessarily like sitting on my back in lotus or lying down, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna like really ground with my feet on the floor and sitting with like a straight spine, back against the back of the chair. And I was doing this half-hour meditation, and I remember, my mind was like, it was like, "This is awful, why are you doing this to me?" Having to sit on this chair, like, and now I really actually enjoy sitting,
Mm,
on a chair, because it allows me Because when I lie down, I often fall asleep.
Mm,
And when I'm sitting upright, I feel that I can receive a bit deeper, and I feel very grounded with my feet on the floor. But I also, um, to get to that place, I had to then sometimes practice that, but also have these moments where I would have my body feel comfortable and lying down and stuff, not,
mm,
not always torture myself on the chair.
yeah.
Um, and it's not now that I'm sitting on the chair all the time. I still also
Mm,
lie down or sit in lotus or whatever. Um, but just have those moments as well where you sort of tickle the mind again, where you're like, okay, now we're going to try and be present with then the uncomfortable. That
mm,
helps for me as well to expand my practice, I think. But
mm,
I totally agree with you as well that it's, if you really want to, quiet the mind and mm, then yeah, it's having a physical sense of um what's the word, like a comfortable space for our
mm,
physical body is really important. Yeah,
mm.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about kind of the different layers of meditation that you can kind of go into. So maybe that will inspire some newbies to kind of keep up the practice. Svenska, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we touched on it already a bit. Maybe we haven't mentioned it so consciously, but there are different layers in a way that when we just start with meditation, usually it's more from a well-being kind of perspective. And I feel as though um, from that perspective, we might think that we need to quiet the mind, And I think um, when we have this intention of wanting to connect deeper with our spirit, then it's really to learn to become the observer of the mind, come into that deeper acceptance. And from that practice, we can start to surrender deeper into our heart space. So
Mm,
then when we practice this mastery of observing the mind is then slowly through that practice able to let go and surrender. And then we start to drop into our heart space more. And our heart space is literally a different dimension then that we're connecting to. And that's where, I mean, everyone receives differently. But for me, I then I literally feel lighter and I feel an expansion of my field. The first time I had this experience of dropping into heart center and connecting with something deeper than the mind, I felt this tingling on my head. And for the first couple times, my ego was wanting, like I was physically trying to wipe it off as if it was an insect crawling on my head. But then I realized very soon, like, oh, wait a minute, this is me receiving higher frequency.
mm,
I'm not saying that, everyone is receiving that way. Others might receive more visibly. How do I say it?
mm,
So then they might start to see visions or, through the third eye.
mm,
Um, Others receive more through audio. So you might start to hear a higher guidance,
mm,
a whisper from your spirit. Um, yeah, there's no one way of receiving is what I'm trying to bring across.
mm,
But the moment we feel that call to deepen our practice, that's really where we're asked to take that step from a more surface level meditation to really a heart centered practice.
yeah.
And I feel that I come back to the group. In group, that is very supportive because then for the ego, there's a much bigger expansion, a much safer space to
Mm,
be able to easier drop down, to let
mm,
go. How's that for you? Because you're now 2 years into the group work.
mm.
What's the difference for you with the meditation that you did at the start and the meditations that you do now?
Yeah, quite a big difference, I think. Like you said about that sort of surface level meditation, I think that's the place I was getting to before I started the spiritual self mastery. And like I said, like can't knock it. I had huge benefits from that. So if you're just at that place, then keep going because it's still hugely beneficial. I remember the first time I sort of started feeling that kind of deeper. I was reading in my breathwork course about the different kind of layers of the brain waves that you go into.
Mm.
So I understand more on a kind of physiological level that I was kind of going into a deeper level of consciousness. And yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, it's kind of a very um, kind of creative space. Like I feel that I'm in a different sort of dimension, and it feels like there's a lot of wisdom that comes through, kind of like a deeper knowing. I don't necessarily,
Yeah.
sometimes I have visuals, not all that clear, but I don't get a lot of auditory stuff, but it's kind of like a deeper feeling of being in a deeper space. And yeah, I mean, I love being in that space. Now I find it hard to come out of that space.
Mm.
We're going to talk a bit about that in the next episode. But yeah, I think what I would say to anyone listening that's practicing is for sure, like the spiritual self mastery takes you to a deeper level. But if you're only at that surface level, then absolutely the benefits are still there.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Svenska, but you're going to be starting some meditations through
Yeah.
School of
Yeah.
Joy.
Yeah. We will start that soon. So if you're listening and you're interested in joining that group meditation, having that experience of group meditation, not necessarily it being 2-3 hours of connecting, then this might be a first step, because the I'm gonna start up a group open to anyone who is wanting to connect with the heart center or learning to connect with the heart center. It's going to be on Thursday mornings. So we will put out an email very soon, and we will put it on the socials soon as well as to when we exactly start. But it's going to be, between 20-25 minutes max. Maybe sometimes even shorter. It depends on what the guidance is, really. Um, but then you can have that experience of what it feels like to be meditating with a group, because you
Mm,
really, really enter a different almost realm or dimension together.
mm,
And that's what we experienced through the Master's Way as well. You don't have to be in the same place to feel then deeply connected, because you go beyond the physical, you go beyond the 3D world, and then you just feel that connection at a much deeper level. So yeah, if you're interested in that practice, then just keep an eye out to
mm.
social media and email. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be sharing about that when it's ready. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I love your
Yeah, me too.
meditations.
Me too. And I think another thing that I wanted to mention, if anyone is if the ego mind would like to read a bit more, listen a bit more about the research behind meditation as well, and entering what B just said about the different levels of consciousness, Joe Dispenza is a very good resource as
Mm.
well. And you mentioned another book as well that you really
Yeah.
enjoyed.
Yeah, there's an amazing book called Bliss More by Light Watkins. I'll link it in the show notes, and I'll also put Joe Dispenza in there as well. But yeah, that was an amazing book that I read quite early on, I think, in on the Path of Light. And I would honestly recommend, it's quite a short book. I would recommend it for anybody that wants to start practicing meditation, because he just debunks a lot of myths around needing to have this empty mind. And he has some really, really lovely little practices in there as well, really simple practices that I used and really deepened my meditation practice. So yeah, I would highly recommend that book.
Beautiful. Should we move into choice box?
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you have one?
Yeah, I think one came up in relation to the meditation. Lately, I've been connecting with a guided meditation that is channeled from the Istar channel. It's from Mary Magdalene, and the meditation is called Come Home. And I was guided to listen to that meditation. And the first time, it's now been 2 weeks ago that I listened to that after I got the guidance. And I just sat, it's only 16, 17 minutes or so. But just like how deep I was able to go in such a short time, and just to literally feel that feeling of coming home is such a blissful, joyful moment that when you've had like this massively busy day, and then you sit down, you breathe, you surrender the mind to what's being channeled in that meditation, and then yeah, that's just absolute bliss.
Mm,
And it's not that that's every meditation,
wow.
but um yeah, when you are able to drop that deep, it's very joyful. It feels very joyful. Yeah. So that's my joy
Mm.
spark.
Well, I have one that's linked, I think. So we've just been away for a couple of weeks, and yeah, we came home, and I think that was kind of my joy spot, really, just being at home, being in my place, being in my space. And blackbirds are really coming up for me a lot at the
Mm.
moment. I love blackbirds, the song of blackbirds in the morning and in the evening. And yeah, we have loads of blackbirds in our garden. And we were just sat having dinner last night. We were all quite tired after our trip. And there was a blackbird singing just above us, just above our kitchen table outside. And yeah, just before we did this podcast, we dropped in for a connection together, and it's guided us in a little meditation there. And there was, I think it was a great tit singing behind you. I don't know
Mm.
if you noticed it, but um, just, I think, yeah, that moment of presence where you are listening to, I always find bird songs so peaceful,
Mm.
that brings me really into the present moment. So yeah, kind of linked to yours, coming home, blackbirds,
Mm.
and the great tit on your guided meditation at the beginning.
Thank you. Shall we ground?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We'll soon take a short moment to ground and anchor together. If this conversation resonated and you'd like to go a little deeper, we'd love to welcome you into our Joy Circle, a monthly newsletter where we share extra reflections, meditations, and resources to support you. You can find us on Instagram at School of Joy Podcast, and we'd love for you to support us on our mission to spread more light and joy in the world by sharing with family and friends. You'll find all the links in the episode description. Thanks again for listening.
Taking a deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And simply honoring wherever the mind is at the moment, whether it's calm, busy, or anything in between. We give thanks to our beautiful mind. For its willingness to learn, to grow. Learning to open to receive, learning to surrender. And we ask our beautiful mind now to anchor our energy with us, breathing in our heart space and breathing down into the heart of Mother Earth a couple times.